In the age of exploration, where every corner of the earth was becoming a target for conquest, peace was rare and ambition was boundless. During the early modern and colonial periods, European empires, especially those on the Iberian Peninsula, raced across oceans to expand their territories, amass wealth, and dominate trade. But when there's only so much land to go around, how do competing powers divide the spoils without plunging into war? This question defined the late 15th century. And while conflict often decided borders, there was one moment, surprising and significant, when diplomacy stepped in. Two rival nations, Spain and Portugal, managed to negotiate a peaceful agreement to divide the entire New World between them. This was no minor treaty over a few islands or coastlines. It was a deal to carve up the yet-to-be-claimed halves of the globe. The seeds of this global division were planted in 1492, when Christopher Columbus returned to Europe after his historic voyage across the Atlantic. Though he had sailed under the Spanish crown, Columbus first stopped in Lisbon, Portugal, before reaching the Spanish court. King John II of Portugal, realizing the magnitude of Columbus's discovery, claimed that these lands were rightfully Portuguese. Why? Because back in 1479, the Treaty of Alcacovas had ended a dynastic conflict between Spain, then still a collection of kingdoms, and Portugal. That treaty gave Portugal control of navigation and exploration south of the Canary Islands, which was crucial. The newly discovered West Indies, where Columbus had landed, fell south of that imaginary line. King John believed this gave Portugal legal rights to the territory, even though he had refused to finance Columbus's expedition. Spain's monarchs, Ferdinand and Isabella, disagreed vehemently. They argued that since the voyage had been funded and authorized by Spain, the discoveries belonged to them. Neither side wanted war, but both were eager to claim the riches and power that came with the new lands. So they turned to the Pope. Pope Alexander VI, a Spaniard by birth, was expected to favor his homeland. In 1493, he issued a papal bull that drew a line from pole to pole, roughly 100 leagues west of the Cape Verde Islands. Everything west of the line would belong to Spain, everything east to Portugal. It was a dramatic move, but also a biased one. Portugal was essentially excluded from exploring the newly found Western Hemisphere, and the bull didn't even mention Portugal directly. King John II was not pleased. Given Portugal's dominant naval position at the time, he had leverage. He demanded a renegotiation and proposed pushing the line 270 leagues farther west. This would give Portugal access to territories that would include a chunk of South America, what would later become Brazil. Surprisingly, Spain agreed. While it may seem like Spain was giving up a lot, in reality, they still retained the vast majority of the Americas. The agreement was formalized in 1494 as the Treaty of Tordesillas. Though not created by the Pope, it was later sanctioned by Pope Julius II in 1506, and for centuries afterward, the dividing line would shape colonial boundaries in the Atlantic world. Soon after, Portugal began exploring its newly recognized half of the world. In 1500, the Portuguese navigator Pedro Álvares Cabral, en route to India, landed on the Brazilian coast. Some say this was accidental. Others suspect it was a deliberate act. Either way, Brazil fell within Portugal's domain under the Treaty of Tordesillas. Interestingly, Spain didn't object to this Portuguese expansion, perhaps because they were more focused on other parts of the New World and had already begun colonizing vast areas from Mexico to Peru. But when Portugal moved into Asia, things got complicated. Spain claimed the original dividing line extended around the entire globe and was meant to divide not just the Atlantic but also Pacific and Asian territories. Portugal strongly disagreed. Once again, the matter was brought to the Pope. In 1514, Pope Leo X issued another papal bull declaring that the original line only applied to Atlantic territories, not to the rest of the world. This gave Portugal greater freedom in Asia, allowing them to expand their trade empire across the Indian Ocean, Southeast Asia, and even Japan. Despite growing tensions and future wars, both Spain and Portugal continued to honor the Treaty of Tordesillas for centuries. Even during the Iberian Union, when both crowns were united under one monarch, from 1580 to 1640, the treaty remained in effect. For over 250 years, it was the framework for their colonial expansion, until the Treaty of Madrid in 1750 finally updated it, recognizing the changes that had occurred on the ground. The Treaty of Madrid acknowledged that people, settlements, and trade had long outgrown the arbitrary line agreed upon in the 15th century. It redrew the map based on actual control rather than theoretical lines. Later treaties like El Pardo, 1761, and the First Treaty of San Ildefonso, 1777, would refine the agreement further. But it's important to remember, all of these negotiations involved just two countries. France, England, the Netherlands, and other rising European powers never accepted the papal bull or the Treaty of Tordesillas. They ignored the supposed divine authority of the Pope to assign the world like a property deed and instead established their own colonies wherever they could. In hindsight, the Treaty of Tordesillas was both a bold diplomatic success and a flawed blueprint. It prevented war between Spain and Portugal, allowing both empires to expand rapidly. Yet it also revealed the arrogance of the time, two nations claiming the right to divide lands they barely knew, ignoring the indigenous peoples who lived there, and acting as if the rest of Europe would simply respect their claims.